Right, so we've let that dry, so now remove the pencil marks. So that you don't want any pencil marks underneath the paint because you can't get them off once the paint dries on top of them. That's why I always paint slightly inside the line. Now if you feel that the surface, and you feel it's slightly raised, you can burnish it with a piece of agate, as I think I've told you before. You can use like an agate palm stone like that, or one of these blenders. Burnishers, I should say. The only reason I've started doing this is because I had some issues with some of the paper. It seems to help to smooth the surface, and it accepts paint better. So moving on. The aim now is to sort of deepen the colour. And I'm still using the same size 6 brush. Slightly drier approach. You can wet it again if you want to, but what I tend to do now is work in the direction of the veins in the leaf. I'm going to use a fairly dry brush approach, just working in a linear fashion. I'm very careful around the outer edge to keep it tidy and a clean outer line. This is what I would term drawing, a sort of dragging dry brush approach. I'm using the same colour as in the initial wash, and I can vary that by adding washes over it as well. If it gets too dry, it starts to drag too much. And move the paper to suit the angle as well. Colour's slightly more solid on this side, so I'm applying it a little bit wetter. And I can drop into where it's wet, where I've just wetted, I can drop more colour into it to deepen that colour. And then drag it out again into a sort of drier area to get the veins. Again, working very carefully up to the edge, being careful not to give a sort of solid outline, but to give a clean edge. You can switch to a smaller brush, but really the larger brush will hold more pigment, and as long as it's got a good point on it, it should do the job. Once it's dry, we can add in. So I'm still using just permanent magenta here. What I'm going to add next is a little violet dioxazine in the darker recesses of the petal where it's folding in. So I'm going to add some of that to the mix. Bring over the palette here so you can see what I have. This is where I'm adding some of the violet dioxazine in it. So I'll let it dry first and then add that.